Hey, welcome to the show. Okay, level with me. Any chance that you're noticing that your joints are getting a little creaky? Maybe your hair is thinning a little bit? Maybe you've experienced a hot flush or two? Well, apparently, none of that has to happen. Today, we are going to talk about how not to age with multi New York Times bestselling author Dr. Michael Greger. Okay, dude, I am not going to lie to you. When you're starting a podcast, it is such a huge score to get a big name to be on your show. Understandably, big name people are very busy and they often reserve their time for people with massive audiences. So, you get shot down a lot. By the way, if anyone has any connections to Dr. Jen Gunter, can you please convince her that she's got to be on my show? She is my most requested guest, and it's going to happen, guys. It's going to happen because look what happened today. I got to speak to Dr. Michael Greger. So you have definitely seen his book, How Not to Die. It sold over 1 million copies. He also wrote the How Not to Die cookbook and How Not to Diet. He is a founding member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. He's a physician and a sought-after expert on nutrition. He's even testified before U.S. Congress, and he was even an expert witness in the Oprah Winfrey really famous meat defamation trial. Do you remember that? Anyway, here's the coolest part. All of the royalties from his books and all of his speaking fees go directly to charity. I actually think this interview is going to blow your mind when you hear what does and doesn't affect our aging. We talk about things like how much protein we actually need, why Japanese women don't have hot flushes, what simple grocery item is more effective at treating dementia than any medication. Buckle up, dude. This is a good one.
Ready to break up with your bullshit? I mean, all those excuses that are keeping you stuck. Because you have one life to live. And if you're not having fun yet, then that's a problem, dude. Welcome to Goals, Grit, and some woo-woo shit. The podcast where you learn about the habits of kicking ass at life. Whether you want to get ripped, get rich, or just get high on life, this is the place to be. Here's your host, best-selling author and feel-good expert, Una Duncan.
Okay, Dr. Greger, thank you so much for being here and congratulations on How Not to Age.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
So I wanted to jump right in, and I first want to clarify, you've already written a huge best-selling book called How Not to Die. So how is How Not to Age different?
Oh, well, so How Not to Die was just, first half was 15 chapters in each of the 15 leading causes of death. Talking about the role diet may play in preventing, arresting, and reversing each of our top 15 killers. But rather than playing whack-a-mole and dealing with each disease individually, if we could slow the sands of time, we could slow biological aging, we could reduce the risk of age-related diseases across the board. So, for example, even if all cancer were eliminated tomorrow, average lifespan will only go up about 3 years. Why? Because if you don't die of one age-related disease, you just die of another. The only reason you didn't die of a heart attack is because you died of cancer. But you were going to die next month of a heart attack anyway, so that's why it wouldn't really extend our lifespan too much. So by slowing the aging process, we can reduce our risk of all these age-related diseases, the heart disease, cancer, dementia, on down the list. And so is kind of a more efficient way to deal rather than, dealing with each disease individually.
I got it. Well, what about the perspective of aging itself as a disease? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I have a video, I have a section in the book and a video talking about it. It's just a debate that exists kind of in the medical literature, more kind of a philosophical debate. It really arose from the reclassification of obesity as a disease. The benefit of doing that, this kind of medicalization of obesity, is that more research dollars are sent to it if it's kind of defined as a disease. And so the hope is that by defining aging as a disease, we would get more research dollars, particularly federal research dollars, into anti-aging treatments. And that started with the so-called TAME trial, but we'd like to see more. And so, it's really, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't matter what we call it, but we would like to see more research into this critical area.
Mm-hmm. But, so many people are like, yeah, but, aging is natural, so we should just embrace it. Can you talk about...
But so is tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is natural, but we call that a disease, right? And you say, well, wait a second, aging is universal, so it's not a disease. You know what else is universal? The common cold. Is that not a disease? No, it's a disease, right? Yeah. Anyway, you can go down the list.
Awesome. No, that's great. And but, I think people say aging is natural because they're trying to shield themselves from all the anti-aging products and propaganda that largely don't
No.
work. I mean, that was your finding, wasn't it? They just don't work.
So much garbage, so much nutritional noise and nonsense. In fact, that's really one of the reasons I wrote this book is, to cut through the craziness. It reminded me of my last book on weight loss. Both the dieting and anti-aging are multi-billion-dollar industries, and with so much money in the mix, anyone seeking even basic practical advice in either arena, living longer or lighter, is just faced with an inscrutable barrage of pills and potions. Look, even as a physician with the luxury of wading neck deep through the medical literature, it was hard to kind of, tease out facts from farce. And look, if it took me 3 years to sift through the science, I'm afraid the casual observer would just have no chance. But of course, the harder it was, the more valuable the resource would be. And really, the good news is, it turns out we have tremendous power over our health, destiny, and longevity, and that the vast majority of premature death and disability is preventable with a healthy enough diet and lifestyle.
Well, this is one of the things I found most shocking is that, and correct me if I'm getting this wrong, did you say that what we eat is a greater risk factor than smoking and genetics?
Oh, well, currently, at least in the United States, according to the Global Burden of Disease Study, well, actually in the world in general, according to the Global Burden of Disease Study, the largest systemic analysis of risk factors in human history, the number one killer in the United States is the American diet, bumping tobacco smoking to number two. Cigarettes only kill about 500,000 Americans every year, whereas our diet kills many more. And indeed, the number one killer of humanity on planet Earth is indeed diet. As well, killing more people than any other cause. And so that's great news, right? Because it means we have the power. We can take responsibility for our own health and our family's health, and we can do something about it.
Well, it's great news if we know what to eat. So can you tell us what should we be eating and not eating so that we don't age and die?
Well, only about a quarter, based on studies of identical twins, only about 25% of the difference in lifespan between people is determined by genetics. So for what we can do over the majority of which we have some control, we can look to the blue zones, these areas of exceptional longevity around the world, where they have up to 10 times the rate of centenarians, those that live to be triple digits. And what they all share in common is they center their diets around whole plant foods. So they're reducing their intake of processed foods, meat, dairy, sugar, eggs, and salt, maximizing their intakes of fruits and vegetables, the whole grains, legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, mushrooms, herbs and spices, nuts and seeds, basically real food that grows out of the ground. These are our healthiest choices.
It's funny. I think, Dr. Greger, when people somewhat know about you, they'll be like, yeah, Dr. Greger, the vegan guy. But then you said, actually, when vegans try a whole foods, plant-based diet, they experience incredible results. Can you just make a distinction?
Absolutely right. Vegans need a little more plant-based too, right? No, we're talking about eating primarily plants, not necessarily exclusively plants. It's really about maximizing the intake of the healthiest foods. As a physician, labels like vegetarian and vegan just tell me what you don't eat. I mean, do you actually eat vegetables, right? And look, it doesn't matter what you eat on your birthdays, holidays, special occasions. It's really the day-to-day stuff that adds up. And so on a day-to-day basis, we really should try to center our diets around these natural foods from fields, not factories, these unprocessed plant foods.
Can I give you a bit of a lightning round of some of the things that you wrote about that just blew my mind? Okay, wheat germ for dementia. Tell me about wheat germ for dementia.
Oh, well, you secretly slip some people some spermidine by giving them dinner rolls baked with wheat germ versus placebo dinner rolls with wheat bran instead, and you can get significant improvements in those with mild dementia, better than all anti-dementia drug treatments so far. But of course, that isn't saying very much.
Okay, well, that's good to acknowledge. And I can just hear my listeners' ears popped up a little bit of the word spermidine. Can you extrapolate on that?
Spermidine, the longevity elixir, spermidine. Don't be put off by the name. When it's actually found throughout the body, when it's later discovered independently in the muscles and brain, they called it musculamine or neurodine, until they realized, it's all the same compound. So naming rights defaulted to the less palatable original. It's considered a longevity vitamin. When we're young, we may be able to make enough. But as we get older, we may need to start ensuring we're getting enough in our diet to activate autophagy into old age, this self-cleaning process, which is one of the anti-aging pathways I talk about in the book. And so the most concentrated source is the wheat germ on a gram per gram basis. On a serving by serving basis, though, The tempeh, actually, a whole soy food, fungal fermented soy food. Number one. Number two is white mushrooms. We can also get some in peas and mangoes and all sorts of things. I encourage people to get a minimum of 20 milligrams of spermidine a day in their diet, and I include a list of all the top spermidine-rich foods.
And increasing our spermidine, I think it's something like it can reduce our age by, or increase our longevity by like 11 years or something. I'm sure
It's
I'm
really
getting that wrong.
quite remarkable. So out of 146 different components in people's diets, these are people in their 40s through 80s, were followed for decades, and the compound in their component of the diet most predictive of longevity was indeed spermidine. And so we should go out of our way to eat it. So out of thousands of life-extending compounds, among the small subset with the fewest side effects, spermidine has the largest documented lifespan extension period.
Amazing. Amazing. I want to take you back to autophagy because I'm in the fitness space and weight loss. And there is always tons and tons of talk about fasting, both as a weight loss strategy and to promote autophagy as an anti-aging strategy. Can you set the record straight about fasting for both of those purposes?
Yeah, so fasting is a terrible way to lose weight. You actually decrease your loss of body fat when you fast because you start eating your own protein. You slow the rate at which your body loses fat, and you start eating your own muscles. So it'd be better actually in terms of weight loss to you can randomize people to water only fasting versus eating, extremely low calorie diet. You actually lose more body fat, which is what you care about. You don't care about weight. In fact, you don't want to lose your muscles. If you care about body fat, you actually lose more body fat on a low calorie diet than you do on a 0 calorie diet. And I talk about that in How Not to Diet. Fasting for longevity, obviously, fasting is the most unsustainable diet, guaranteed to kill you if you do it long enough. Autophagy doesn't really maximally ramp up to 2 to 3 days of fasting, which is too long to go unsupervised without medical supervision, because your kidneys may fail to go into sodium conservation mode, and then you can die, basically.
Right.
So all these studies saying, oh, you should just time restricted feeding, you decrease your daily feeding window and that'll increase autophagy. No, if you're a rodent, it works, but in human beings, it actually takes a few days. But we can fast or go fast. Exercise induces autophagy. 60 minutes of moderate intensity activity like brisk walking significantly boosts autophagy in the muscles based on muscle biopsies taken before and after. Though you have to do it enough, 20 minutes fails to move the needle.
And autophagy, again, just for anyone listening who doesn't know that word, it's basically cellular turnover, right? That happens more when we're younger and less when we age. Is that true?
So it's kind of the primary system for cleaning the body from the inside out, basically clearing away accumulated cellular debris that contributes to the aging process.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If I could just hold you on weight loss for 1 second, because I know my audience would be really interested in this. I wanted to talk about calories in, calories out. On the one hand, I think I heard you in an interview say that even when people swear up and down, no, I'm in a caloric deficit, I'm eating nothing, and I'm not losing weight. And then when they're locked in a room in a laboratory setting and their calories are actually controlled, they always lose weight if they are in a caloric deficit. Is that true?
It's just a law of thermodynamics. But what's interesting is your actual scale, your weight on a scale may not change for days. It's really remarkable. But of course, you're actually losing fat. You have to lose fat. I mean, because your body has to keep your brain alive some way. But you can retain water and all sorts of things that can actually maintain that's why people have this sense that wait a second, I stopped eating or I dramatically restricted my calories and I'm not losing any weight. No, you're losing body fat in exactly how much body. There's an equation. This is how much you restrict. This is how much fat you're going to lose. And you are losing that if you actually do these fancy kind of body scans, but it may actually not reflect on the scale. But eventually it will actually reflect on the scale. You go long enough. And then you'll see that crashing down of your weight down to that perfect line, that theoretical line, which you've been losing body fat all along, but you just may not be losing weight. because there's all sorts of ways that you can kind of retain water. But yeah, you're losing body fat whether you like it or not.
Got it. And you mentioned the law of thermodynamics, but I think I also heard you say that it's more complicated than calories in, calories out because some calories affect us differently than others.
Oh, right. So a calorie is not a calorie in terms of, calories in different forms can have different effects. Eating time, eating the meal distribution, all sorts of crazy things, like based on our circadian rhythms. The same food eaten in the night, eaten in the evening is more fattening than the exact same food, exact same number of calories eaten in the morning. That's just one of many factors. And it's not just what you eat, but how much you absorb, obviously. So by eating, fiber-rich foods, your body actually, can trap some of the calories and kind of, flush them down the other end. You don't actually absorb those calories. So, so this kind of oversimplified, concept of a calorie is a calorie. I mean, technically that's true in kind of laboratory setting. So like, Coca-Cola likes to say that, eating, eating the 200 and whatever calories in a bottle of Coke would be equivalently flattening to eating 200 whatever calories in carrot form. There was actually a quote. And that's technically true, but you could drink a bottle of Coke in 2 minutes, where they actually tested people. It took people over 3 hours to eat that many calories in carrots.
Right.
I forget how many carrots that is. It's like 5 carrots. I don't know. But it took people forever. You just to chew that many carrots. It was, right. So like, yeah, in a laboratory setting, it's true. But out in the real world, it's far from it.
Okay, one of the things that blew my mind the most was spinach over protein to increase muscle mass as we age.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. So in older men and women, adding extra protein has not been shown to increase muscle mass or increase muscle strength or increase physical performance. What has been shown to help is spinach or dark green leafy vegetables. The nitrates in dark green leafy vegetables can improve muscle mass, muscle strength, muscle performance. So Popeye was right about the spinach, not so much the pipe smoking.
So because this is just contrary to everything that is shoved down our throats in the fitness industry about especially.
You got to make more money selling you protein powders or selling you spinach.
Well, yeah, for sure. But even with muscle sarcopenia as we age, the common wisdom, which is maybe not right.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know. So you're like, well, come on. If you have excessive age-related muscle loss, the so-called sarcopenia, well, surely then protein helps, right? Nope, doesn't help. Does not improve muscle strength, muscle mass, or muscle performance in older men and women. What does? Exercise, right. Resistance exercise, strength training. It's use it or lose it. That's how you build. As you say, wait a second, what about protein plus exercise? Wouldn't that be? No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in older men and women. It actually does not benefit muscle mass, strength, and performance.
So exercise plus spinach. Wow.
Oh, well, or just spinach alone can do it. It's amazing.
That is amazing.
But yeah, you should definitely be exercising.
Okay, and then to hold you on protein, you said that actually protein restriction is correlated with anti-aging?
Oh, protein restriction down to recommended levels is the only thing I can find that actually can slow all aging pathways. When it comes to aging and protein, less indeed, maybe more. And so, I mean, that's the entire longevity literature is all about protein restriction down to recommended levels. And what that does, it boosts NAD, improves immunity, decreases oxidative stress, inflammation, insulin resistance, the cancer promoting growth hormone IGF-1. And so not only do we get no benefit of adding extra protein in terms of muscle mass, strength, and performance, instead the excess protein most Americans get causes a drop in the pro-longevity hormone called FGF21, a drop in testosterone, a worsening of the age-accelerating enzyme mTOR. So we should really strive to stick to the recommended levels of protein, which is 0.8 grams per healthy kilogram body weight, which comes out to be about 45 grams for the average height woman, 55 grams a day for the average height man.
Wow. That is a mind bender. And here's another one. You said that breaking bones has nothing to do with bone density.
85% of age-related fracture risk has nothing to do with bone mineral density. That's just been drilled into our heads by Big Pharma and the billion-dollar bone density screening industry. But 15% of age-related bone fracture risk is bone mineral density. So we still want to do weight bearing exercise and all the other things that improve the density or the quality of our bones. But the vast majority of fracture risk is due to falls. And so what do? Fall prevention. What does that mean? Lower limb strength exercises and balance training.
Right. Back to exercise. What about the fact that there is no word for hot flashes in Japan?
Why in the Japanese language is there no even though here in the kind of the Western world, hot flashes are considered inevitable for postmenopausal women? Well, the thought was because of their soy food intake. Japan has the highest per capita soy food consumption in the world. But you don't know until you put it to the test. And indeed, Harvard researchers randomized women to a half a cup of unsalted soy nuts a day, saw a significant, within 2 weeks, drop in hot flashes, 40 to 45% compared to the control group. And indeed, if you put people on a plant-based diet with whole soybeans, half a cup of whole soybeans, like out of a can, 84 to 88% drop. 2 randomized controlled trials have shown this, a drop in hot flashes. Most of the plant-based bean group ended up free of moderate to severe hot flashes compared to 95% still suffering in the control group. So we have extraordinary power over these so-called vasomotor symptoms of menopause, such as hot flashes or flushes and night sweats.
Wow. Like in a time when we keep hearing about stem cell injections and HRT and all these things, it seems almost like hippie-ish and unsophisticated to talk about diet when it comes to anti-aging. I mean, how would you respond to that?
It's certainly unprofitable. I mean, why do we hear about all these fancy things? Because people can charge ungodly amounts, right? So when it comes to your health or it comes to your longevity, people are willing to pay any amount of money, right? What wouldn't you pay to have your kids healthier, to live longer, right? And so because there's so much money to be made, there's just this, people can't help themselves, but by pushing all sorts of ridiculous pills and potions. So sometimes some of the least profitable things are actually most profitable when it comes to our health, even though it's not going to make people a lot of money.
And do you think part of it is that people are just really resistant to making these kind of changes? And so that's why there's so much of a market in helping people find alternatives?
I mean, I think there is. I mean, people do. Who wouldn't want a silver bullet? Like take one pill and don't have to do anything, don't have to get off the couch. But I think mostly it's just people underestimate the power of a diet and lifestyle to actually improve one's health. I mean, if people really knew the ability of plant-based diet, for example, to reverse heart disease, the number one killer of men and women. Like if that's all a plant-based diet could do, reverse the number one cause of death. I mean, shouldn't that be kind of the default diet to prove it otherwise? In fact, it's also so effective in preventing, arresting, and reversing other top killers like high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes. We seem to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming. If people knew the power of plants, then I think people would be willing to do it. But the big broccoli isn't exactly out there on the streets putting up billboards.
Right. So I was talking to my husband and telling him I was going to have this conversation with you. And he said, okay, can you ask him, like, what if you're a normal chip eating, beer drinking dude and you decide in your 40s to kind of clean up your act? What kind of damage has been done?
Oh, your body has a remarkable capacity to bounce back from injury. In some of these seminal heart disease reversal studies, people are in their 60s. So after, 6 decades of eating crap, their bodies were able to, once they stopped, assaulting their arteries, poking themselves with a fork 3 times a day, their body's natural healing processes were able to take over and start the healing process, opening up arteries without drugs, without surgery, just a plant-based diet and lifestyle program. It's like smokers. One of the most amazing things I learned in all my medical training is that within 15 years of stopping smoking, your lung cancer risk approaches that of a lifelong non-smoker. Like, isn't that amazing? Your lungs can clear out all that tar, and eventually it's almost as if you didn't start smoking at all. But every morning of our smoking life, the healing process starts until wham, first cigarette of the day. Re-injuring our lungs with every puff, just like we can re-injure our arteries with every bite, when all we had to do all along, the miracle cure, is to just stop damaging ourselves and let our body's natural healing processes bring us back towards health.
So what are the big baddies then? Trans fats, or what are the big things that you're like, that's basically like smoking a cigarette. Don't freaking put that in your mouth.
Oh, well, so eating a burger, for example,
Okay.
appears to cut one's life as short as smoking 2 cigarettes. So if it wouldn't even occur to you to light up before and after lunch, maybe you should choose the, bean burrito instead. Same thing with an egg. A single egg is associated with the same lifespan contraction as smoking 2 cigarettes, and people eat multiple eggs sometimes. And so, it's all about, kind of the benefits and risks. I mean, look, it's your body, your choice. We're each responsible for the predictable consequences of our actions. And my role is just to, inform people. Well, if you continue to do X, Y, and Z, this is the predictable consequences of your actions. But look, it's up to you. You want to go bungee jumping, smoke cigarettes, disconnect your smoke alarms, not wear your seatbelt? You do you.
So you've been at this for a while, and as far as I can glean, I mean, the research keeps coming up with the same basic findings. In order not to die, diet, or age, you need to exercise, sleep, manage your stress, eat more plants. In researching your latest book, was there anything that kind of surprised you? Other than the plants and spinach thing? Yeah, was that one?
No, tons of stuff. I mean, I learned as much writing these books as people do reading these books. I mean, there's entire fields of science in the book, like the microRNAs, weren't even discovered when I graduated medical school. So, I mean, it was just very, very cool. Some of the most surprising things, well, the exercise chapter, I think if you read that, you'll be totally shocked. I certainly was. The sleep chapter, again, totally not what I thought we would find. Red wine, resveratrol, NAD supplements, the vitamin D, flop, the fish, protein restriction, microRNAs. I mean, the list goes on and on. All the things that I thought going in, I'd be recommending one thing, but then, oh my God, totally made the opposite recommendation because the science so clearly pointed in one direction, not the other.
Wow. Can you give us one example? Maybe an exercise that would interest my audience, I think.
Oh my God. Well, that is just a fascinating. Basically, when it comes to exercise, the benefits, the evidence supporting the overall benefits of exercise is absolutely overwhelming. But its role in life extension is surprisingly still a matter of debate. For example, by looking at the rare cases of identical twins whose exercise patterns diverge, we can tell if it's a genetic predisposition to exercise or the actual exercise that accounts for athletic longevity. With the same DNA, would intense physical activity actually make a difference? Apparently not. The same mortality rates were found in identical twins, whether they exercise vigorously or not.
Wow. So how did that change your recommendations? I'm not assuming you're telling people to not exercise.
Oh my God, of course they should exercise, right? I mean, exercise improves muscle mass, muscle strength, balance, mobility, decreases risk of falls, minimizes bone loss, improves cognition, enhances mood, treats depression, improves artery function, erectile function, insulin sensitivity, overall quality of life. I mean, absolutely. For health span, 100% exercise like crazy. But in terms of lifespan, it does not appear to be cause and effect.
Wow. That is so interesting.
I told you it was surprising.
Yeah, that is surprising. That is surprising. In chapter 10 of How Not to Diet, you talk about the psychological aspects of weight loss and the power of mindset. Do you think our mindset is also important when it comes to aging?
Well, I mean, so I talked about kind of the intentions. I mean, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
But that's just ways to kind of establish habits, right? So in How Not to Diet, I talk about like basically how do you develop a healthy habit. And so that's what are called implementation intentions, the specific if-then plans to perform particular behaviors in specific contexts. And so that can help people basically form any healthy habit. And so since healthy habits are what's critical for weight loss, for preventing chronic disease and slowing the aging process, absolutely, using these kind of psychological tricks can help us kind of establish these lifelong patterns.
Right. So do the things we intend to do. Back to me wondering, if people are so resistant to, for example, changing their diet, they can use these habits and the habit loop and implementation intentions.
So cool.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's critically important. And, it can be, simple things, but then they just become kind of second nature to us. Just come kind of part of our normal daily routine.
Exactly. In your preface to How Not to Age, you tell us about the massive amount of citations and say that you read all these articles so that we don't have to. And of course, most of us aren't reading research articles, but instead we're just being pummeled by influencers and clickbait media. So do you have any advice for the average Joe on how to discern health advice that might be bullshit?
Oh, sexy bullshit. Oh my God. That's what get clicks, right? Who's going to buy a book with broccoli on the cover, right? You want bacon on the cover. That's how that's how you get people to click on your whatever. If you want to know about climate change, you look what the IPCC has, right? Which is the consensus of all the climate scientists. Like these people dedicate their lives to studying climate. What do they say, right? So you listen to them. All right. Well, so Dr. David Katz, head of the Yale Prevention Research Center, said, look, we need the same thing in nutrition. There's so much bullshit out there. Let's ask the nutrition scientists, right? The experts. And so pulled together hundreds of the top nutrition scientists in the world to agree to a consensus statement. What is the healthiest human diet? So that's what we should, right? Trust. And thankfully, the core tenets of healthy eating and living, there's a consensus for decades now. It's really not that complicated or controversial. Well, maybe it's controversial, but the science isn't. And that is, spoiler, so you can go to truehealthinitiative.org, which is the website of this great initiative. And spoiler alert, the healthiest human diet is one centered around unprocessed plant food.
Got it. Yeah, that's good. So you've been swimming in peer-reviewed publications for how to live a long and healthy life for a long time now. So other than the treadmill desk, what are some habits that you've implemented and that you would just shout to the top of every mountain that you want everyone to do?
Oh my God. Well, healthy eating is critically most important thing, right? So I think, so diet is number one cause of death and disability. I think physical activity it doesn't even make the top 10 in terms of global years of disability. But I think it comes in like 11. So exercise is important. But in terms of, I would encourage people to download my free app, Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, which encourages people to kind of include the healthiest of healthy foods into their daily routine. So greens every day, the healthiest vegetables; berries every day, the healthiest fruits; a tablespoon of ground flax seeds, quarter teaspoon of turmeric, on down the list. How much exercise to get every day, etc. So that's probably the most important thing: cleaning up your diet in hopes of kind of crowding out some of the less healthy options.
Amazing. We actually have a printout of the Daily Dozen on our fridge, and my kids check off.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a wonderful resource. I love it. Dr. Greger, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you so much.
Oh, I'm so glad, Beer. Keep up the good work yourself.
All right. Oh my gosh. I got so much out of How Not to Age, and I was so glad I got to speak to Dr. Greger. That was so cool. But dude, who here got a little triggered when he said that eating a burger was like smoking 2 cigarettes? I didn't even eat those things. And I was too shocked to say anything. And then when I was reviewing the conversation in my head, I was like, oh, why did I ask him about that? That just seems crazy. Anyway, so I froze there. Sorry. But I did go and I dug up a video where he explains that comparison. And specifically, he cites all the studies he's referring to when he says that. So I'll link that in the show notes so you can check that out if you felt like, what the hell on that one. And isn't that funny? When we're presented with new evidence that contradicts something that we know and maybe that we kind of like I didn't like it when he said that exercise doesn't really extend our life. I was like, that goes against everything I've ever heard. Even the spinach builds more muscles than protein. Like, you might think that I like that as a plant-based eater, but it actually kind of made me really uncomfortable because it's telling me that what I believe to be true isn't. And then I'm like, what an interesting reaction. Why do I have such an attachment to that old knowledge being right? Especially in the face of almost 2,000 peer-reviewed, randomized, placebo-tested studies, which is his standard. I mean, it's pretty fucking likely that he's right and I'm misinformed. But I just noticed I have all this resistance to that, which is really interesting. Like, why wouldn't I be like, cool, that's so interesting. Thanks for doing all the rigorous research so that I can benefit from these findings. Instead, I'm like, well, I don't know. I think I might just be suspicious of you so I can continue doing what I've always done and then feel like I'm right. Anyway, sorry for processing it loud. I just noticed that in myself and I wonder maybe you had a similar reaction. If so, I'd love to hear it. Send me a DM on Instagram, and I will see you next week.
Hey, dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at Una Duncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.